Deep in forests lie abandoned castle towers, nature slowly reclaiming them. But not all of these are uninhabited. If you ever see a lone castle tower in the middle of the forest, out of place and small in stature, it might be an entity known as castle deer. Castle deer will resemble a small castle tower, usually covered by branches and berries in their dormant state. Birds and other wildlife love to come and pick the berries off the tower, a very nutrient-rich snack. But when awoken, the tower will shake itself out of the ground, revealing that it is more creature-like underneath that towering head. And inside the tower, peeking out of the bottom archway, is a deer-like face with eyes that glow in the darkness. Despite the towers being smaller in comparison to usual ones, castle deer are very tall creatures, who seem to use their towers as a shell for defense and shelter, like a crab or a snail. Their towers are speckled with small holes, antler-like branches sprouting out of them, bearing a vast quantity of berries. Upon closer inspection of the berries, they don't look like typical ones, instead resembling small pebbles, shaped slightly like the towers that the castle deer hide in. They allow creatures to take and drop their berries, which in turn will be planted across the landscape, with new castle deer being formed underneath the ground, the towers acting like plant stalks sticking out of the soil. Once they reach full maturity, they will emerge from the ground for the first time and wander the forests. What their purpose is exactly remains unknown, as anyone who attempts to get close or tail the castle deer will inevitably lose them due to their skittish nature and speedy hooves, along with the ease at which they can burrow down into the ground if they have no time to run. When watched from a distance, it's observed that they never seem to have an exact destination in mind, aimlessly traversing the forests. It's observed and theorised that castle deer don't consume anything above ground, instead feeding on the nutrients in the soil when they burrow down during the day. It's believed the tattered cloaks that they are dressed in are part of the body as much as the tower is, behaving like roots when underneath the ground, sapping it of nutrients to grow more castle deer and sustain them. They do not appear to hunt any creatures, instead they are themselves hunted by the numerous predators who roam the forests at night. But whenever in danger, they will simply run away or burrow into the ground, the tower acting as a perfect defense over the more vulnerable part of the body. However, if they are caught, the parts of them not encased in the tower are consumed, leaving a crumbling pile of dust where it once stood, the berries all snatched up by the wildlife. Castle deer are nocturnal entities, burrowing down into the ground throughout the day and re-emerging at night to walk through the moonlit forest, usually accompanied by flocks of birds who follow behind, waiting to take the berries. Sometimes more than one castle deer may gather together in a clearing, and when this happens, occasionally they will start performing a series of movements together in a circle, almost like they are silently dancing together. It's not clear what the purpose of this is, if it's maybe a form of communicating information with each other. Once the dance is finished, they will part ways and wander through the forest alone once again. Castle deer will never leave the forests they are formed in, perhaps because the trees provide more protection for them as opposed to the empty fields sprawled across the land. The world outside the forest doesn't intrigue them, as they are not curious creatures, instead fleeing or burrowing down at the first hint of movement, unless it is from their own friendly wildlife or fellow castle deer. The forest's wildlife thrives thanks to the castle deer, whose rich berries provide sustenance for the small creatures, whilst in return the forest's soil nourishes the castle deer.